Yo, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to try to do a quick video here. There's nothing to see here on the background. Look, I'm not some big video editor. I'm not going to go in and make some pretty art or anything. I just wanted to talk, give a bit of a discussion for you guys. This video is about Resto Shaman versus Holy Priest. This is a holistic approach of Wrath Classic, thinking from the perspective of who should be your fifth healer for Wrath Classic when building out your guild, building out your raid comp, and this is for the entirety of the expansion. Keep in mind, we are not talking about and we are not referencing crap content or crap information from servers where you can go on and spend $100 to get a Shadowmourne and go farm ICC Heroic with your buddies. This is not that. This is considering Wrath Classic, assuming that we get a pre-nerfed version of all of the content. Now, for your standard healer comp, you're going to run a Holy Paladin, a Disc Priest, a second Holy Paladin, a Resto Druid, and then this fifth healer. Now, do keep in mind that a lot of these top guilds, when we get to Wrath Classic, are genuinely going to be cutting healers. So this conversation might not be very valuable for you at all. By the time that you're watching this video, maybe you've already cleared all of Nax, maybe you're already in Ulduar, and the whole meta has shifted at this point, and this video becomes useless. It's possible. However, for the average viewer, you're going to be using 5 healers for everything in Wrath. You may use a 6th healer from time to time, and maybe you feel like you need to drop a healer from time to time, but for the most part, 90% of the people out there will likely just be running a 5 healer comp. That way they don't have to worry about benching or off specs or whatever. Now, for that 5th healer, the meta has shifted a lot from the private server scene. A lot of people have seen a shift from Resto Shaman to Holy Priest, and even from this Holy Priest going back to Resto Shaman. So there's a lot of debate around what is the best 5th healer for your comp. And let me just share my experience with Daw and my thoughts on it. As I've played both specs before, I've played both all the way throughout the expansion in almost every single fight, and I have a pretty good grasp on what I'm talking about today. Now let's start with the Resto Shaman. Now, strengths of a Resto Shaman and their kind of style of healing is going to be big burst heals with your chain heal spamming. Resto Shamans are also really good at keeping up inspiration. Really, really good at keeping up that armor buff for your raid and for your tanks. They have really desirable CDs. Your Resto Shaman's going to be the one guy you want pressing the Bloodlust button. You don't want your LA Sham if you have one, or your Enhanced doing it because they don't want to use that global on it. Let your Resto Shaman be the one to press Bloodlust. And they're bringing Manatide Totem, which is going to be fantastic for your healers, providing all of them extra mana. Or you throw them in a group with mages or for DPS to get mana back as well. Resto Shaman's also has the benefit of being really easy. Possibly the easiest healer in the game, but that's up for debate. But they're extremely easy to pick up. So you know that you're getting a lot of value out of your heals and a lot of value out of your gameplay because it's not too complicated. They also scale extremely, extremely well. Every tier, you can genuinely feel the power creep of a Resto Shaman as you get more and more powerful. You have less and less mana issues, and you start to push out more and more chain heals every single fight. Now, some weaknesses about Resto Shaman is they do have a lot of mana issues early. They suffer severely from lack of mobility. All they have really when they're on the move is your Riptide, which is decent, and you have one Nature Swiftness cast that you can do, but it's on a big cooldown. So, other than that, big mobility issues. Thankfully, there's not a whole lot of mobile fights in Wrath, although I do think that a lot of the important fights in Wrath ask you to have some decent mobility. So, keep that in mind with your Resto Shamans. Now, they do have really good utility as well. They have totems, of course. Now, we all know that totems bring cleansing totems, for your poison cleansing. You have your Tremor totem for fears. You have your nature resist totems so that you can be the one who drops nature resist for when your raid needs it. That way you don't have to ask your hunters to do it or any other shaman to do it. And you're going to be regularly bringing the caster spell haste totem, which is super good for every caster in the game. You also have purge offensively, and you have decurse to decurse your raid, and you have a ranged kick, which none of the other healers even have. Now let's talk about your Holy Priest. And First off, the strengths and the kind of style of a holy priest is going to be a little bit of a mix of blanket healing with some ramp up burst. What that means is you send out your prayer of mending, your blanket renewing, you have your circle of healing that you can press as often as possible, and it all ramps up to when you get 3 stacks of serendipity to get a big prayer of healing out. Um, that's really kind of the only time that a holy priest is kind of casting. They can be extremely mobile, so that's one of their strengths. Extremely, extremely mobile. There's also a lot of ways that you can kind of build a holy priest. If you don't want to go for serendipity and you want to spend those points elsewhere, you totally can. I wouldn't advise it, but you totally can. I think Empowered Renew is going to be extremely strong. I think people genuinely sleep on Body and Soul. I know it's a meme. People are probably going to clip this and ship it everywhere, but I do think Body and Soul has its uses. It's also really fun, and you can spare 1 point to throw in it. Some weaknesses about Holy Priest is it wants all the Warlock loot. Pretty much your BIS list is always going to be items that your Warlocks want. So that's actually a big issue. Um, don't underestimate that kind of issue because every tier you're going to want to funnel gear first to the DPS and then to your healers. And if you approach every single tier like that, your Holy Priest is basically entering into each new content behind. Unless you're split rating and making sure that your Holy Priest gets some loot here and there, they will likely be a little bit behind on gear. Not a huge deal, but you got to keep that in mind because they are literally competing for BIS items with your best DPS in the raid. They also have big mana issues early, just like almost every healer, but especially just like a Resto Shaman. They have some mana issues early. No big deal. Another weakness with Holy Priest is they're completely unwanted in 10 mans. They have got to be the worst healer for 10 mans. Sure, like you can get it done. Of course. 10 mans aren't the hardest content in the game, but when you get to ICC and when you get to Ulduar and you're doing some hard modes and you got heroic ICC 10, you don't want your Holy Priest. He's going to have to off-spec disc, which requires a bit of a different gearing set, and it's just kind of wasteful. The utility is there, though. They have Mass Dispel, although they are going to be casting that slower than your Disc Priest, and they do have some magic dispelling and purging, and they do have some really, really good CDs. Your Guardian Spirit is an amazing CD, amazing CD. And of course, your healing and your Mana Hymn. Now, note that we do want to say that a Holy Priest can approach almost every fight in the game with some different talent changes. Meanwhile, a Resto Shaman doesn't ever really need to change talents. You can submit your Resto Shaman talents and just kind of stick with that for the whole expansion. Meanwhile, Holy Priest, they might opt in for some reduced mana cost of their instant cast spells, or maybe they want to take Body and Soul for like one meme fight. Maybe they want to drop serendipity, whatever the case may be. Your Holy Priest can shift around their talent changes per fight if they choose. Now, let me talk about Resto Shaman versus Holy Priest on a tier by tier basis. So, in tier 7, if I'm pairing the two together and seeing who is better in tier 7, I'm going to have to say they both tie. Genuinely, tier 7 is not that difficult of a tier. It's going to be pretty similar to the first tier that we had in Classic TBC. Both healers are going to struggle with mana issues. It's kind of the lowest moment of their careers where they have very little spell power and very little haste. I would say that your Holy Priest wins on some good fights, and those being Sapphiron, which could be a bit of a struggle for some people, and Eye of Eternity. Your Holy Priest is awesome at Eye of Eternity. Meanwhile, your Resto Shaman is going to be way more useful on a fight like Patchwork. Your Holy Priest is useless on Patchwork, basically. They're going to be doing some healing, but it's mostly going to feel like they're not even there. And your Resto Shaman's really, really good on Obsidian Sanctum. In tier 8, I would have to say, now we said tier 7 that they tie. In tier 8, I'm going to have to go with Holy Priest. I think your Holy Priest wins tier 8 pretty well, actually. I don't even think it's that close. I think your Holy Priest wins for Yogg, whether you're going Yogg 1, Yogg 0. Although if Yogg 0, you're probably not even taking a Holy Priest. But I think your Holy Priest wins on Yogg. It's a really mobile fight. They have really good dispelling there. And they're just really fast and they can keep up. Your Resto Shaman is just going to fall behind. On Firefighter, we talked about it before. Your Resto Shaman is going to feel terrible on Firefighter. Your Holy Priest is going to feel amazing on Firefighter. You're going to feel so useful, and you're genuinely going to feel like a Guardian Spirit on Firefighter can literally make or break your pull and execute. If you get a bad barrage or a bad timing with the Nova, your Guardian Spirit will literally save the fight. Your Holy Priest is also really good on Thorum, both Phase 1 and Phase 2. And your Holy Priest is actually really, really good on Algalon. Although Resto Shaman's decent on Algalon too. Your Holy Priest the kit will feel fantastic on Algalon. Now for Tier 9, Tier 9 is kind of weird because Tier 9 is kind of a joke of a tier. It's not that hard, pretty straightforward. All you have is TOGC. And I guess I'd say the Resto Shaman wins in Tier 9, but it's so close that it probably doesn't even matter. I really only say Resto Shaman wins Tier 9 because they're going to be really good at healing penetrating cold targets on a noob. And the reason I say that is because the noob is really like the only fight that poses a challenge to your guild and your raid. The other fights are pretty straightforward and pretty easy. Both of these healers are going to pump on Twin Valks, and your Holy Priest might just feel a little useless on a noob. Meanwhile, your Resto Shaman could actually pump some good damage with their Magma Totem, Fire Nova, and even just providing good heals on penetrating cold targets. And then in Tier 10, I hate to say it, but I really do think in Tier 10, both healers are actually going to tie again in Tier 10. They are both just at this point where they have scaled so far into the expansion that they're going to have a lot of extra spell power. The Holy Priest will easily hit their haste cap, and your Resto Shamans, if they're not already at their haste cap, they're close to it, and they're going to be blasting off. I will say your Holy Priest is going to be really good in particular for your fight like Blood Queen Lanithil, and your Shaman's probably going to be better on a fight like DBS. Both are pretty decent on Lich King. Again, I've said it in the past, I think Holy Priest's kit was just genuinely made for Lich King. Your Shaman is good on Lich King. Even though it's a high mobility fight, I think your Shaman's just really good on Lich King because they've reached a point where they've scaled so hard that they're just fantastic anyway. So there's a lot of fights in Lich King, obviously, and they're all going to be challenging for you. But I think both healers just fill that gap really, really well in Tier 10. So I have to give it a tie. Now, overall, what is my recommendation here? We talked about all this. Holy Priest versus Resto Shaman. What's my advice? What should you go? Or what should your guild build or go for? I gotta say Resto Shaman. I gotta say it. At the bottom of my heart, I'm a Holy Priest player, and I want to cheer for the Holy Priest, but I have to recommend the Resto Shaman. For most situations, most guilds, and most players, the Resto Shaman is just more approachable. They're very desirable for 10-man content. I think the Mana Tide Totem covers a lot of mistakes with healer mana management. And I think they're just the most preferred choice for a lot of encounters. They're going to be your choice for pressing Bloodlust, and they just fill gaps in healing demand really well. Where your Resto Druid is blanket healing, your Disc Priest is blanket absorbing with Powered Shield, your Resto Shaman's there to burst raid heal. And they do that really well, so I gotta hand it to the Resto Shaman. Now I will say with this caveat, I do think Holy Priest is probably better in a vacuum for the top tier guilds. I think when you have healers that can manage their mana extremely well, I think your Holy Priest can output just as much, if not more, than your Resto Shaman, while also providing a Guardian Spirit, which is a very, very valuable CD. The problem is, I don't think we're gonna run into much of that with Wrath Classic. In a pre-nerf state, what we'll be doing likely is cutting healers. And so both of them will be either off-specking or being benched for a lot of these top-tier guilds. So I would just stick with Resto Shaman. But you go with what you want. It's totally fine either way. You will be happy with either decision. I think you will have so much fun with either one of these healers. They are actually both a blast to play. And so choose wisely, and you can't choose wrong, but take this information all with a grain of salt because we don't know what's going to happen once we get Wrath Classic, what state it's going to be in, and what this speedrunning community and what all of these thousands and thousands of players are going to find out once we get that server delivered to us and what nuances might come with it. So, take it as you will, and we'll talk next time.